Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah, 55 years old, and I never in a million years thought I'd be sitting here telling strangers on the internet the worst thing my own child ever did to me. But after 3 weeks of crying myself to sleep in a cheap motel room that smells like old cigarettes, I realized if I don't get this out, it's going to eat me alive. So here it is, raw, real. The story of how my son, Michael, looked me in the eyes and said, "Mom, pack your bags, you're leaving tomorrow." I raised Michael alone. His father walked out when Michael was 2, said he needed to find himself, and the next thing I knew, I was a 23-year-old single mom with a mountain of bills and no family to help. I worked 2 jobs, days at the insurance office, nights cleaning offices, so Michael could have new sneakers and not feel different from the other kids. I remember one Christmas, I skipped my own coat so he could have the Lego set he begged for. He hugged me so tight that night and whispered, "When I grow up, I'm gonna buy you a big house, Mom." I laughed through my tears and told him I didn't need a big house. I just needed him. He was a good kid. Honor roll, football, the kind of boy teachers called a pleasure to have in class. I scraped together every penny for his college, took out a second mortgage on my tiny 2-bedroom so he could live on campus and not worry about money. When he graduated with an engineering degree, I cried harder than he did. I thought the hard part was over. I thought I'd finally get to breathe. Then he met Rachel. Beautiful, ambitious, a little sharp around the edges. They got married fast. Big wedding I paid half of because his dad was too busy. 2 years later, Lily was born, then Ben. That's when everything shifted. Michael's job was demanding, Rachel was climbing the corporate ladder, and suddenly they needed help. I sold my little house, the one I'd lived in for 30 years, put the entire equity into their new 5-bedroom so they could afford the neighborhood with the good schools. They gave me the finished basement with its own entrance. "It's perfect for you, Mom," Rachel said, smiling that tight smile of hers. "You'll have your privacy and we'll have ours." At first, it really did feel perfect. I woke up every morning to the sound of little feet running down the stairs. I'd make pancakes with chocolate chips for Lily and cut Ben's toast into dinosaurs. I picked them up from school, helped with homework, stayed up late baking cookies for class parties. Michael would come home exhausted and say, "Mom, I don't know what we'd do without you." Those words kept me going, even when Rachel started leaving little notes on the fridge. "Sarah, we'd prefer the kids eat what we cook," or "please don't buy them more candy." I told myself she was just stressed. New mom, big job, young marriage. I swallowed my pride and kept showing up. But 6 months ago, something changed in Michael. He started coming home later and later. "Big project at work," he'd say, kissing the top of my head like I was still the mom who fixed everything. Except his eyes didn't meet mine anymore. His phone was always face down. One night, I heard him in the garage at 2 a.m. whispering. I crept to the top of the basement stairs and caught fragments. "I can't keep doing this. She's going to find out." "No, not yet." My stomach dropped so fast, I had to grab the railing. I told myself it was work stress. Maybe a client, maybe he was planning a surprise for Rachel. I'm good at lying to myself when the truth feels too heavy. Then came the receipts. I was doing laundry, Michael's work shirts, because Rachel doesn't have time, and a folded piece of paper fell out of his jeans pocket. A hotel receipt from the Marriott downtown, 2 nights, king room, $387, dated the same weekend he told us he was at a conference in Chicago. I stared at it until the ink blurred. My hands started shaking. I put it back exactly where I found it and went upstairs like nothing happened. That night at dinner, Michael laughed with the kids, ruffled Ben's hair, and I sat there smiling while my heart cracked in half. I waited 3 days. I watched him closer. The late texts that made him smile at his phone when he thought no one was looking, the new cologne, the way he'd suddenly take the long way home from work to clear his head. Every sign I'd ever heard about on those late-night Reddit threads I used to scroll when I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to be that mother-in-law. I swear I didn't. But Lily asked me why Daddy was always tired, and Ben said Daddy didn't read him a story last night because he had to call his friend. I couldn't unhear it. Last Tuesday, Rachel had a late meeting. Michael came home at 8:30, looking drained but wired. The kids were already in bed. I poured him a cup of coffee the way he likes it, 2 sugars, splash of cream, and sat across from him at the kitchen island. My voice was quieter than I wanted it to be. Michael, I found the hotel receipt. He froze mid-sip. The mug actually trembled in his hand. For a second, I saw the little boy again, the one who used to crawl into my lap when he was scared. Then his face hardened. Mom, it's not what you think. I'm not stupid, honey. I've been around long enough to know what late nights and secret hotel rooms mean. He set the mug down so hard, coffee sloshed over the rim. You don't get to do this. You don't get to dig through my pockets and play detective in my marriage. I wasn't digging. The receipt fell out while I was doing your laundry. The laundry I do every week because Rachel is too busy. I'm not attacking you. I'm scared for you, for the kids. If you're seeing someone else, you need to stop before it explodes. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was the bitter sound of someone cornered. You always do this. You always make everything about you, how you sacrificed, how you paid for the house, how you gave up your life. Newsflash, Mom, I never asked you to sell your house. I never asked you to move in and take over. My throat closed up. I did it because I love you, because I wanted to help. You did it because you can't let go. His voice rose, then he caught himself and glanced toward the kids' rooms. When he spoke again, it was low and ugly. You know what? I've been thinking a lot, and I think it's time you found your own place. Tomorrow. We need space. The kids need space. Rachel needs space. I stared at him, the same boy I carried on my hip when he had nightmares, the same boy who cried at my mother's funeral and promised he'd never leave me alone. You're kicking me out? My voice cracked. Of the house I helped buy? He didn't even flinch. It's our house now, legally, and honestly, after what you just pulled, I think it's for the best. I couldn't breathe. I stood there in the kitchen I'd painted soft yellow for the grandkids, surrounded by drawings stuck to the fridge with their little handprints, and felt my entire world collapse in slow motion. Michael turned and walked toward the stairs like the conversation was over, like I was already gone. But as he reached the bottom step, he stopped, looked back at me, and said one last thing that made every hair on my arms stand up. And Mom, don't even think about saying a word to Rachel. You have no idea what you've just started, and if you open your mouth, you'll lose a lot more than this basement. He disappeared upstairs. The house went quiet, except for the ticking of the clock and the sound of my own heart hammering, so loud I was sure the kids would wake up. I stood frozen, the coffee still spilling across the counter, and realized I was shaking so hard I could barely stand, because in that moment I understood two things at once. First, my son was really kicking me out, and second, whatever secret he was protecting wasn't just an affair. It was something bigger, something that had been rotting under the surface of our family for a long time, and I was about to find out exactly how deep the betrayal went. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed in the basement with the lights off, staring at the suitcase I'd dragged out from under the storage shelves. Every creak of the floorboards upstairs made my stomach twist. I kept replaying Michael's words in my head. You'll lose a lot more than this basement. What did that even mean? My son had never spoken to me like that before, not even during his angry teenage years. This was colder, calculated, like he was protecting something far bigger than a simple affair. By 4 a.m., I started packing. I folded my clothes slowly, trying to stay quiet. Each sweater I placed in the suitcase felt like another piece of my heart being removed from this house. the house I had poured my retirement savings into, the one I thought would be my forever home, surrounded by grandchildren. I found a little drawing Lily had made for me weeks ago. Stick figures of all four of us holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Grammy's house, she had written in crooked letters. I cried so hard I had to stuff a towel against my mouth so no one would hear. At 6:30, I heard little footsteps. Ben appeared at my door in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Grammy, why is your big bag out?" I forced a smile and pulled him into my lap. "Sweetheart, Grammy has to go stay somewhere else for a little while." His bottom lip trembled. "But why? Did we do something bad?" "No, baby, never. This is grown-up stuff." I hugged him so tight I was probably squeezing him too hard. "You remember how much Grammy loves you, right? No matter what?" He nodded against my shoulder. Lily came down a few minutes later, and the three of us sat on my bed in silence. I read them their favorite story one last time, my voice cracking on every other sentence. When Michael finally came downstairs at 7:15, he wouldn't even look at me. He just said, "The kids need to get ready for school. Rachel's taking them today." Rachel. She still had no idea what was happening. Or maybe she did. I couldn't tell anymore. When she came down in her power suit, hair perfectly styled, she paused when she saw my suitcase. "Sarah, what's going on?" Michael answered for me. "Mom's decided it's time to have her own space. We're supporting her decision." The lie slid out of his mouth so easily it made me nauseous. Rachel looked at me with something between confusion and relief. "Oh, well, if that's what you want." I wanted to scream. I wanted to show her the hotel receipt. I wanted to tell her that her husband was tearing our family apart. But Michael's warning echoed in my ears, so I just nodded. It's for the best. The goodbye with the kids broke me. Lily clung to my leg, crying, "Don't go, Grammy, please." Ben kept asking if I'd be back for his soccer game on Saturday. I promised I would try, even though I knew Michael would never let it happen. As Rachel drove them away, I stood in the driveway watching the car disappear, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out everything that mattered. Michael handed me an envelope with $800 inside. "This should cover a few weeks at a motel. After that, you'll need to figure it out." I looked at the cash in my hand and then at the man who used to be my little boy. "Michael, whatever you're hiding, it's going to come out. Secrets always do. And when it does, I hope you remember that I tried to warn you." His jaw tightened. "Stay out of it, Mom. I mean it. You've already done enough damage." I left before I completely fell apart. I drove my old Honda to the cheapest, decent motel on the edge of town, the Sunrise Inn. The room smelled like bleach and regret. I sat on the stiff bed and cried until my eyes were swollen. 55 years old and suddenly homeless because I dared to care too much. For the first 2 days, I barely left the room. I ordered cheap takeout and stared at the ceiling, replaying every sacrifice I'd made for Michael. The missed promotions at work so he could attend his games, the nights I went without dinner so he could have seconds, the way I smiled through my own loneliness for decades just so he would never feel it. And this was the thanks I got? On the third day, anger started replacing the shock. I couldn't just sit there. I needed answers. So I did what any desperate mother would do. I started digging carefully. I still had a key to their house. Michael had forgotten to ask for it back in his rush to get me out. Late that afternoon, while I knew he'd be at work, and Rachel had mentioned a client dinner, I drove over. My hands shook as I unlocked the side door and slipped into the basement I used to call home. Everything looked the same, yet completely different. I went straight to Michael's home office, the little room off the garage he thought was so private. I searched his desk drawers. Most were locked, but one wasn't. Inside, I found bank statements. My stomach dropped when I saw the numbers. Large cash withdrawals every other week. $2,000 here, $3,500 there. Places where money was going that wasn't showing up in their joint accounts. Then I found the second phone. It was tucked in the back of the filing cabinet, cheap and black, nothing like the fancy iPhone he carried every day. I powered it on, no password. The messages made my blood run cold. "You can't keep stringing me along like this. I need more than weekends, you promised." The contact name was just Jay. The messages went back almost a year. Plans to meet, complaints about Rachel, complaints about me. One message from 2 weeks ago read, "If your mother finds out and starts talking, everything falls apart. Handle it." Handle it. Those 2 words sat like ice in my veins. I took photos of everything with my own phone, then put the burner back exactly where I found it. As I was closing the drawer, I heard the front door open. My heart nearly stopped. I froze in the dark office, listening to footsteps. It was Michael. He was home early. I could hear him on the phone, voice low and tense. "Yeah, she's gone. No, she doesn't know anything. I made sure of it. Look, just calm down. I'll transfer the money tomorrow. We just need to keep this quiet for a few more months until the deal closes." He ended the call. I heard him pour a drink in the kitchen. Then his footsteps moved towards the office. I slipped out the side door into the garage and hid behind his car, barely breathing. My legs were shaking so badly, I thought I'd collapse. After what felt like forever, he went back inside. I waited another 10 minutes before I crept out and ran to my car parked 2 streets over. That night, back at the motel, I couldn't stop shaking. The affair wasn't just some woman named Jay. There was money involved. Big money. Something about a deal, and Michael had clearly been planning my removal for a while. I barely slept. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. A woman's voice, soft and nervous. "Is this Sarah, Michael's mom?" "Yes. Who is this?" There was a long pause. "My name is Jenna. I think we need to talk about your son, about everything." My heart hammered against my ribs. Jenna, the J from the burner phone. She continued before I could respond, her voice cracking. "He told me you were dangerous, that you'd ruin everything if you found out. But I can't do this anymore. The guilt is killing me. Can we meet? Today?" I sat there on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the ugly floral wallpaper, trying to process what was happening. My son's mistress wanted to meet me. The woman who had helped tear our family apart was reaching out. I should have said no. I should have told her to leave me alone. But the mother in me, the one who still desperately wanted to understand how my boy had become this person, couldn't resist. "Where?" I asked. She gave me the name of a small coffee shop on the other side of town, 2 hours from now. I spent the entire drive there rehearsing what I would say, how I would stay calm, how I would get the truth without falling apart. But when I walked into that coffee shop and saw the woman sitting in the corner booth, nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. She wasn't some young, flashy mistress like I'd imagined. She looked to be in her early 40s, tired eyes, and holding something in her arms that made my entire world tilt sideways. A baby, a tiny baby who couldn't have been more than 3 months old. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Sarah, this is your granddaughter." I stood there in the doorway of that quiet little coffee shop, the smell of fresh espresso and cinnamon rolls suddenly turning my stomach. Jenna looked up at me with exhausted, red-rimmed eyes. The baby in her arms, my granddaughter, let out a tiny whimper and nuzzled closer to her chest. My knees nearly gave out. "Sarah, please sit down," Jenna whispered, "before you fall." I don't remember walking to the booth. One moment I was frozen, the next I was sliding into the seat across from her, staring at this tiny face that had Michael's nose and my late mother's chin. The resemblance hit me like a freight train. "How old is she?" My voice came out hoarse, barely audible. 11 weeks, Jenna said softly. She adjusted the pink blanket with trembling hands. "Her name is Emma. Emma Grace." Emma Grace. Michael had always said if he and Rachel ever had another girl, he wanted to name her after my mother. The betrayal sliced so deep, I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from crying right there in public. Jenna kept talking, the words spilling out like she'd been holding them in for months. He told me you were controlling, that you'd never accept him moving on, that you'd try to take the kids away from Rachel if he found out. I believed him at first. I felt so guilty. But then Emma came, and I couldn't keep lying to myself. I listened as she told me everything, how she and Michael had met at a work conference 18 months ago. She was a financial consultant brought in to help with a big project at his company. It started as late-night emails, then drinks, then stolen weekends. She said he complained constantly about feeling trapped, Rachel's ambition, the pressure of being the perfect provider, and me living in their basement watching his every move. He said you made him feel like he was still a little boy who couldn't do anything right, Jenna said quietly. That you sacrificed so much it made him feel suffocated. Those words stung worse than any slap. All those years of giving everything, and that's how he saw it? I reached out and gently touched Emma's tiny hand. She wrapped her fingers around my finger instinctively. Fresh tears burned my eyes. Does he see her? Jenna nodded, looking ashamed. Once or twice a week when he can get away. He pays for my apartment and sends money, but he's terrified Rachel will find out. There's more though, Sarah. It's not just the affair. She glanced around the coffee shop like someone might be listening, then leaned in closer. The money. He's been moving large amounts around. He told me he's involved in some kind of side investment with people from work, something about redirecting project funds. He said it was temporary, just until he could leave Rachel and be with me and Emma full time. But lately, he's been scared. He keeps saying if you started asking questions, everything would collapse. My mind raced back to the bank statements I'd found and the phone call I'd overheard. Redirecting funds. That wasn't an affair problem. That was something that could destroy lives, prison time, ruined careers, lost custody. I sat there holding this innocent baby's hand while the weight of what my son had become pressed down on me. The little boy I carried through the grocery store on my hip had grown into a man capable of this level of deception, cheating on his wife, hiding a child, possibly stealing money, and throwing his own mother out like yesterday's trash to protect it all. What do you want from me? I asked Jenna. My tone wasn't angry. I was too drained for anger right now. She wiped her eyes. Because I'm scared. Michael's been different lately. Distant, short-tempered. He keeps promising he'll leave Rachel, but I don't think he ever will. And Emma deserves more than secret visits and lies. I thought maybe if you knew, you could talk to him or help me figure out what to do. I don't want to destroy his family, but I can't keep living like this either. I looked at her, another woman who had fallen for Michael's charm and promises, just like I once believed in his father. History repeating itself in the cruelest way. Part of me wanted to hate her. The bigger part of me saw a scared, single mother holding a baby who shared my blood. We talked for almost 2 hours. I told her about raising Michael alone, about the house, the sacrifices, the night he kicked me out. She cried with me. When we finally stood up to leave, she asked if I wanted to hold Emma. I did. God help me, I held that baby like she was the most precious thing in the world. She smelled of powder and new beginnings, and for a moment the pain eased. Then reality crashed back in. I need time to think, I told Jenna, but I want to be in her life. She didn't ask for any of this. We exchanged numbers, and I drove back to the motel in a fog. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to pull over twice. When I got to my room, I sat on the bed and stared at the photos I'd taken of the burner phone messages. Everything was worse than I imagined. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Rachel. She answered on the third ring, sounding surprised. Sarah, is everything okay? I kept my voice steady. We need to talk, in person, just you and me. It's important. She hesitated. Michael said you were adjusting to your new place. Is this about the kids? They've been asking about you nonstop. It's bigger than that, I said. Please, Rachel, tomorrow morning, the park by the library. She agreed. I barely slept again. The next morning, I sat on a bench watching ducks on the pond, my heart pounding as Rachel walked towards me in her yoga clothes, looking every bit the put-together wife and mother. She hugged me awkwardly and sat down. "What's going on, Sarah? You're scaring me." I took a deep breath and told her everything: the hotel receipt, the burner phone, Jenna, Emma. I left out the money part for now. I needed to see her reaction first. As the words came out, I watched her face go from confusion to disbelief to pure devastation. She didn't cry at first. She just sat there, perfectly still, like someone had hit pause on her entire life. When I finished, she whispered, "He has another daughter?" I nodded. Rachel stood up suddenly and walked a few steps away, then came back. Her voice cracked. "All those late nights, the new cologne, the way he's been looking at me like I'm the problem, and you knew and you didn't tell me right away?" "I was thrown out before I could process it," I said gently, "and he threatened me, said I'd lose more than the basement if I spoke up." She laughed bitterly, the sound breaking into a sob. "He kicked you out because you found out he's been living a double life after everything you've done for us?" We sat together on that bench for a long time, two women who had both loved the same man in different ways and both been shattered by him. Rachel asked questions I couldn't answer. She wondered out loud if she should confront him immediately or gather evidence first. She talked about the kids and how this would destroy them. Then she looked at me with something I didn't expect: gratitude mixed with pain. "Thank you for telling me. I know it couldn't have been easy." As we were leaving the park, my phone buzzed. It was Michael. I showed Rachel the screen. She nodded. I answered on speaker so she could hear. "Mom," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage, "Jenna just called me in a panic. She said she met with you. What the hell did you do?" Rachel's eyes widened. I kept my voice calm. "I met your granddaughter, Michael. Your daughter." There was a long silence. When he spoke again, the coldness in his tone sent chills down my spine. "You have no idea what you've done. Stay away from Jenna. Stay away from my family. If you ruin this for me, I swear I'll make sure you never see Lily or Ben again. And that's just the beginning." Rachel snatched the phone from my hand before I could respond. Her voice was steel. "Michael, it's me. We're done talking through your mother. Come home right now, and we need to have a conversation about Emma and whatever money you've been moving around behind my back." The line went dead. Rachel handed the phone back to me, her face pale but determined. "I'm filing for divorce today. I want you to come stay with me and the kids while we sort this out. He doesn't get to throw you away like that." For a moment, relief washed over me. Maybe this nightmare would end with some justice. Maybe I'd get my family back. But as we walked to our cars, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street, the same one I'd seen outside the motel 2 nights in a row. The windows were tinted. As soon as we looked at it, the engine started and it drove away slowly. My blood ran cold. Michael wasn't just angry. He was scared, and scared people do desperate things. That night, while I was packing my things at the motel to move back in with Rachel and the kids, someone knocked on my door. I opened it thinking it was the front desk. It wasn't. 2 police officers stood there, looking serious. "Sarah Thompson?" one of them asked. "Yes? We need you to come with us. Your son Michael has filed a report. He's accusing you of harassment, stalking, and attempting to extort money from him and his wife. He also mentioned some missing documents from his home office that he believes you took." I stood there in shock as they continued. "He's claiming you've been unstable since he asked you to move out, and that you're making up wild stories about an affair and a secret child to destroy his marriage." My heart hammered in my chest. The baby, the money, the threats. Michael wasn't just covering his tracks. He was coming after me with everything he had. And I had no idea if Rachel would stand by me once the full weight of his lies hit her. The 2 police officers stood in the motel doorway like figures from a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The older one held a clipboard while the younger scanned my small room with practiced eyes. "Ma'am, we're not arresting you tonight," the older officer said carefully, but your son has filed a formal complaint. We need you to come to the station and answer some questions." I felt the blood drain from my face. My son? Michael? He's accusing me? They nodded. I didn't fight them. I grabbed my purse, locked the motel door, and rode in the back of the patrol car, feeling like a criminal in my own life. At the station, they sat me in a small interview room that smelled of stale coffee. A detective came in and laid everything out. Michael claimed I'd been obsessively calling and texting him, that I'd broken into the house multiple times, stolen documents, and was now trying to blackmail him by inventing a story about a secret child to get money for the house I felt entitled to. I listened in stunned silence, then asked for a lawyer. Thankfully, Rachel had already been busy. She showed up an hour later with a sharp family attorney named Diane, who looked like she'd handled worse scandals than this. "Sarah didn't steal anything," Rachel told the detective calmly, sliding copies of the burner phone messages and bank statements across the table. "These are from Michael's own office, and there's a third party, Jenna, who will confirm the child is his." The detective's eyebrows rose. The whole atmosphere in the room shifted. Michael's attempt to paint me as the unstable one was crumbling before it even began. I spent that night at Rachel's house for the first time since he'd thrown me out. Lily and Ben woke up the next morning and tackled me with hugs so fierce I thought my ribs would crack. "Grammy's back," they squealed. Their joy was the only pure thing left in this mess. Michael came home that afternoon to find his wife, his mother, and his attorney waiting at the kitchen table. The moment he saw me sitting there, his face twisted with rage and fear. "What is this?" he demanded. Rachel spoke first, voice steady but ice cold. "Sit down, Michael. We know about Jenna. We know about Emma. And we know about the missing project money you've been moving." He tried to deny it at first, blustering about how I'd manipulated everyone, how Rachel was believing my crazy stories. But when Rachel played a short voicemail Jenna had recorded, Michael promising to leave her and build a life together, the fight drained out of him. He sank into a chair and put his head in his hands. The truth came pouring out in pieces. Yes, he'd been having an affair. Yes, Emma was his. The money? He'd gotten in over his head with some shady investment scheme at work, borrowing from client accounts to cover gambling debts he'd hidden for years. He thought he could fix it before anyone noticed. Kicking me out was supposed to buy him time and silence. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mom," he said, eyes finally meeting mine. There were real tears there. I panicked. I looked at the man I gave an everything to and felt something inside me finally break and heal at the same time. "You didn't just kick me out of a house, Michael. You tried to erase me from your life because facing me meant facing what you'd become." Rachel filed for divorce the next week. Full custody requests were put in motion, especially after Jenna agreed to cooperate and provide evidence. The company launched an internal investigation into the missing funds. Michael was suspended immediately. The man who once had everything was watching it slip away, one consequence at a time. I got to meet Emma properly a few days later. Jenna brought her to a neutral park. Watching that tiny girl smile up at me melted layers of anger I didn't even know I was carrying. She was innocent in all of this. I made a promise to myself right then. No matter how this family fractured, I would be there for her the way I wished someone had been there for Michael when his own father left. The weeks that followed were brutal but clarifying. Lily and Ben struggled with the changes. Daddy wasn't living at home anymore. Mommy cried sometimes at night. Grammy was back, but everything felt different. I spent hours reassuring them, reading stories, baking cookies, and answering their hardest questions as honestly as a grandmother could. Michael showed up one evening when Rachel was out, looking thinner and older than his 34 years. He stood on the porch and asked if we could talk. I let him in. "I lost everything, Mom," he said quietly. "Rachel's taking the house. The company's pressing charges. Jenna's filing for child support. I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it all back." I studied his face for a long time. Part of me wanted to comfort the little boy I still saw inside him. The bigger part, the part that had been thrown away like garbage, stayed firm. I loved you enough to give up my entire life for you, and you repaid that by trying to destroy mine to cover your mistakes. I forgive you, Michael, because holding on to hate would only poison me, but forgiveness doesn't mean trust. It doesn't mean you get to walk back into our lives like nothing happened. You have a lot of work to do if you ever want a relationship with your children again. All of them. He cried then, real, shoulder-shaking sobs. I didn't hug him. Some breaks can't be fixed with one conversation. 6 months later, life looks very different. Rachel and I sold the big house and bought a beautiful townhome together with enough space for me to have my own floor and the kids to have stability. We co-parent the children in a way that actually works, two women who learn to lean on each other after the same man let them down. Jenna and I have become, not friends exactly, but respectful co-grandmothers. Emma spends every other weekend with us, and watching her grow has brought healing I never expected. Michael, he took a plea deal and is serving 18 months. He writes letters to the kids that I read to them when they ask. Some days I miss the boy he used to be so much it aches. Other days I'm proud of the strength it took to survive what he put me through. I've learned something important through all this pain. Love isn't always enough when someone chooses darkness. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let consequences teach what your words never could. I sacrificed everything for my son, but I won't sacrifice my peace anymore. If you're watching this and you're in a toxic family situation, whether you are the parent who gave too much or the child who took it for granted, please hear me. Your worth isn't measured by how much you endure. Sometimes walking away, even when it breaks your heart, is the beginning of getting yourself back. I'm Sarah. I'm 55. I lost my son, my home, and my illusions, but I found my voice, my boundaries, and a new kind of family built on honesty instead of secrets. And for the first time in years, I'm finally home. If you've stayed with me through the full story and painful journey, then thank you from the bottom of my heart. Sharing my story wasn't easy, but if it helped even one person feel less alone in their own family struggles, then every tear was worth it. If this story touched you, moved you, or made you hug your loved ones a little tighter, please do me a favor. Like this video, leave a comment telling me your thoughts, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more real, raw stories like mine. Your support means the world to a grandmother who's still healing. Until next time, take care of your heart, protect your peace, and remember that you're never truly alone. God bless you all.